today I'm going to be telling you one of my very favorite Bible stories. And if you want to read it at home, it can be found in Matthew 14. But before I tell you the story, we're going to play a quick game that I'm going to call Sink or Float. So I'm going to show you an item, and if you think it's going to float, I want you to give a thumbs up. If you think it's going to sink, thumbs down. So let's try this. If I show you a peg, a wooden clothes peg, do you think it's going to sink or float? Everyone cast your vote. We're going to have a try. You ready? It floats. How many people got that right? Congratulations to you. The next item, a spoon. Do you think it'll sink or float? Let's give it a go. That was a bit, I hope most of you got that right. Spoons sink. What about, who remembers these? A good old fidget spinner. Fidget spinner. Do you think it'll sink or float? Cast your votes with your thumbs. He sank. What about an apple? Do apples, do they sink or float? Anyone know? Do apples sink or float? It floated. Now my last item is a bowl. Sink or float? It floated. Now this orange bowl reminds me a bit of a boat. And in our story today, there's a boat. I'm also going to have some help from a good friend of mine. His name's Peter. This is Peter. He's an orange. I'm sure if Peter had hands, he'd be waving at you right now. So in our story, Peter and the other disciples are in a boat, and Jesus is not with them. But on this day, the wind was really strong and blowing the boat around. Did you see the wind yesterday blowing around the trees? Imagine that on the water and blowing the water around. And now I want you to close your eyes and imagine you're Peter on the boat with all the disciples, and the wind's blowing, the waves are crashing against the boat, moving you around, and then you see something incredible, something you've never seen before. And there's a man out on the water, walking. It was Jesus. What would you do if you saw someone walking on top of the water? Do you know what Peter did? He said, Jesus, let me come walk on the water with you too. And Peter, he got out of the boat and he walked on the water. Peter trusted so much in Jesus' power that he could climb out of the boat and he could walk on the water. But then, remember, it's stormy and the waves are crashing. And Peter looked around and he became afraid. Peter stopped believing that Jesus was more powerful than the storm. And as soon as Peter stopped trusting Jesus, he sank. And you see, if we take away our trust in Jesus, when the storms come and bad things in our life happen, that's what we talk about. When we talk about storms in our life, we're talking about bad and difficult things. We start to sink. Some people might say that they're in a storm right now, that this is a difficult time. But we need to trust that God is stronger and more powerful than the storms, and that he'll keep us safe. Now, here comes the best part of the story. So, Jesus didn't let Peter just sink. Even when Peter became afraid and stopped trusting that Jesus would keep him safe, Jesus didn't let Peter sink. Instead, he reached down his hand and he pulled Peter out of the water. Now you see, when bad things happen, God is strong and powerful, and we should trust him. But even when we become afraid, God still reaches down his hand and rescues us. He always rescues you. Do you trust him?